I seen y'all. All right, Mario had me in the back rethinking my career choice and updating my resume. I was in my notes, adding little notes and bullet points. I appreciate that. Hopefully you all did the same. But really, that was a fantastic session that will guide those interested in a career in tech on how to enter the field. Everyone say, I'm leaving with something. Nah, that don't sound like y'all leaving. Say it one more time. Say, I'm leaving with something. That's a lot better. Okay, cool. So now I'm here to introduce our first panel of the afternoon. Ladies and gentlemen, I need y'all to make some noise, clap it up, give a lot of energy for Miss Yemisi Oguchina. She serves as the program manager at Fearless. Let's welcome her to the stage, y'all. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. So I'm gonna apologize in advance because my voice is cracking. So I'm gonna hold on as long as I can. I believe I have a great opportunity following Mario because I think some of what he talked about is kind of how my story turned out. So I'm Ola Yemisi Oguchina, program manager at Fearless, and I started in the tech industry about 4 years ago now, in 2019. In 2019, I had the opportunity to be a subcontractor to Fearless, and I came in a non-technical role. I never saw myself in tech. So when Mario was talking about positioning yourself to get in the room, to possibly learn what you need to learn to get where you want to go, that's my story. So when I was a subcontractor, I began to learn more about tech and the opportunities in tech. And at Fearless, we practice Agile. So I became a Scrum Master. And I had the opportunity to become a Scrum Master still as a subcontractor. I ended up seeing my first contract through and then had the opportunity to apply to Fearless and became a Scrum Master for Fearless. So I think the opportunities just lined up for me. And then about 6 months ago, I became a program manager. So my track was not ideal. It wasn't anything I ever thought I would walk into. I went into school thinking I would be in the business field. Tech never entered my mind. If anything, I took a computer class and I realized this ain't for me. I failed the class. I was like, oh, I have no stake in this game. So I say that to say to anyone in the room who feels like if they don't know or they do know, but the opportunities don't feel like they're lining up, position yourself. Put yourself in a place where you can learn from someone else, that you can grasp to the community around you, and I think the opportunities will line up. Last week, I heard our portfolio director from our health and sciences program say one thing that I want to quote before I leave. Oh, my phone died, so I won't quote her. But she was asked, how does it feel being in tech, knowing that Black, African Americans, and women are underrepresented in this space? And essentially what she said is, you have to be fearless. You have to show up, that she delivers in this space, that she's meant to be in this space, and that she deserves to be in this space. So I think there's something that we can all take from that you deserve to be in the space that you're in, and can't nobody tell you different. Thank you. Thank you
so much. Keep clapping, y'all. Y'all can give us some energy. Keep clapping. Thank you, Yemisi. Thank you. Thank you. And with that, I welcome you all to the Rise of Women in Tech panel, moderated by Ellington West, CEO and co-founder of Sanavi Labs. Y'all clap it up, make some noise. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, good morning, CIAA. I am Ellington West. I am the CEO and co-founder of Sanavi Labs. We're a medical device and software company that is based right here in Baltimore. And as a woman founder in the science and tech field, I am so excited to have a conversation and also at times partake in the conversation around women in the rise of tech. Last year, Deloitte reported that women are shrinking the gender gap in tech. It's increased by 7% since 2019 in the global workforce. Most notably, in 2022, nearly 1 in 4 tech leadership roles were held by women. That is approximately about a 20% increase year over year, but still, there is so much work to be done. In fact, in a 2020 report by AnitaB.org, a global women's organization for technologists, they found that it could take 12 years before women see equal representation in tech-based, in the tech space, according to current statistics. And when it comes to Black women in tech, we must be even more intentional about recruiting and retaining them. According to CNBC, Black tech professionals make up 7.4% of the tech workforce. Women hold 26.7% of those positions within the industry, yet Black women comprise a mere 1.7% of that. Bloomberg published last year saying that Silicon Valley, in an article saying that Silicon Valley leaves women behind as it closes the wage gaps, reporting that Black women earn 92 cents to every dollar that their white male counterparts make. That data is outrageous, but it is not surprising, because while we have made great strides, we still have a long way to go. Today, women continue to be promoted at slower rates than their male counterparts, and according to Women in the Workplace report, only 86% of women are promoted to managerial roles to every 100 men. And then when you drill the data down even further, that gap widens because only 52 women are promoted in the tech space to every 100 men. And so there is a silver lining, even though this data is horrifying, that while women make up a mere 2% of enterprise startup founders or co-founders and less than 29% of the workforce today, this discussion is not fiction because we are on the rise. It is proven that women, but more specifically women of color, outperform their male counterparts as founders and co-founders. So today, during today's discussion, we will unpack all of this and hear from some Black women who are making a lane for themselves against all odds. So let me take a moment to introduce these phenomenal women. I would like to first introduce my dear friend, Ariane Long, who is the founder and chief estrogen officer of a high-tech feminine care company that she started in 2016. Ariane was diagnosed with a cervical tumor linked to additives found in popular feminine products. She is headquartered right here in Baltimore. Femly increases and access, and includes access to free 100% organic tampons and pads through a touchless dispenser that she patented, y'all. She is a patent-holding technologist, okay? She is also an HBCU certified Morgan alum. So Ariane, thank you for using all of your expertise and experience in not only confronting issues that disproportionately impact women of color, but thank you for being a leading technologist. Next, we have the Brittany Young. Brittany is the founder and CEO of B360. As an organization that utilizes dirt bike culture to end the cycle of poverty, disrupt the prison pipeline, and bridge communities. Brittany is a Baltimore City native. She is a retired engineer who has programmed nuclear plants, has developed medical devices, and has even planned for satellite explorations. So, right? So that's just her track record, y'all. But hold on, wait a minute. It was after the incarceration of her younger brother that she was empowered to create solutions to funnel talent through STEM education, community engagement workforce, and pipeline events. B360 is changing the perception of engineers and dirt bike riders. Brittany, we're so lucky to have you on this panel today. And our final panelist is changing the game from a VC standpoint. We have Alana Mann. Alana is an entrepreneur and VC, recently named partner at Latimer Ventures, which is a fund that focuses on funding Black and Hispanic founded companies here in Baltimore City. They prioritize, and their investment thesis is really in software as a service for startups. They focus in cybersecurity, fintech, and healthcare. And before joining Latimer, Alana served as a principal at Cultivation Capital, where she is focused on investments in software and IT companies. And she, at the time, had deployed over $15 million in capital to startups. Alana, thank you also for being here and for deploying funds in this city.
Thank you.
We all know that capital is vital to everything that we do. So I am so excited that you are here, but also that we have two fabulous entrepreneurs who are leading the way. So really, when it comes to it, I just got to pause and say, y'all, Black women, okay? The end. So while I have had a really fun time giving brief, high-level intros of the three of you, I think that it would serve the audience so well to hear in your own words for about a minute each who you are, why you do what you do, and why we're all so lucky to have you in this city. Ariane, we're going to start with you.
So I founded Femly after being diagnosed with a tumor linked directly to chemicals in the pads and tampons that I was using. When I couldn't find something that was organic, eco-friendly, and sustainable, I launched Femly to be a vehicle to increase access to women all over the country. I ended up founding and launching my dispenser that is now a patent-pending innovation because I was driving down MLK Boulevard and I ran into a woman who was using a sock as a sanitary pad. So I knew that I needed to build a company that profited women who could afford, but then also supported women who couldn't with the organic feminine products that they deserved. And that's why Femly exists.
Fabulous. Thank you for sharing your story. Brittany?
For me, again, my love of Baltimore itself. I always tell people I'm born, raised, never leaving, because where else would I grow and be my best self? Growing up, I always watched dirt bike riders in Druid Hill Park. But once I got into engineering, and I'll share more about that later, I realized there were no me's. There were no Black women chemical engineers, and that made me upset. Our city has over 120,000 STEM careers that can move communities out of poverty, but we teach STEM in a way that's so old, outdated, and not showing kids and people how smart they are. And then, like we talked about, I lost my little brother to the prison system, so I really became excited, but also tired of the systems we have in place. And all of that is what drove me to create B360. We literally take people out of streets, out of traffic, and provide programming to make sure we create safe spaces for our youth and young adults. And right now, we are launching a campaign to create the first ever dirt bike campus in the country. So if you go to ride4change.org, you'll see more about our work.
Woo! I'm sorry, say that again.
Ride4change.org. Thank you.
Hello everyone, my name is Alana Mann. I'm a partner at Latimer Ventures. Latimer is an early stage venture fund focused on investing in Black and Latinx entrepreneurs, specifically those building software as a service businesses. So anything that has B2B recurring revenue business models we'll invest in. And we're just excited to be here. Obviously, I came from the world of BC where there isn't a lot of Black or women investors. So it's amazing to be part of this panel and to be here in such an awesome, diverse group.
So great to have you all. Thank you for those overviews and highlights. You are all each doing something so incredible and so important. I am going to kick it off with a question for Brittany. Brittany, engineering and technical roles are among corporate America's fastest growing and highest paying job categories. Mario just gave us a great rundown of what's out there and where we can be. However, according to Workbench, in a report that came out in 2022, women have long been underrepresented across the tech industry, with 46% of women reporting that they've experienced gender bias directly. When women in these roles have negative day-to-day experiences and don't see an equal path to an advancement, it could lead to more significant gaps. So, as a former engineer, please share your experiences in the field and what prompted you to retire from a male-dominated field to pursue B360, which, ironically, might also be a male-dominated space when it comes to dirt bikes. So your resilience is phenomenal. Please give us your tips and tricks.
No, I think what I'm about to say, pretty sure we all can relate to. So me, again, growing up, I went to Poly for high school, but I always knew I was going into engineering But when I got to the field, it wasn't made for me, right? So think of wanting to go into engineering since you were 3 years old. I watched Bill Nye the Science Guy. I'm like, ooh, he's making stuff blow up. I'm gonna do that too. And then finally landed my dream job, and I'm gonna tell you where it was. And for the first 2 weeks, they thought I was a secretary because no one in the building was black and no one in the building was a woman. Right, and that was my experience as a 19-year-old girl, straight from Baltimore, straight from Park Heights. It could have broke me, but instead, I funneled all of my anger into them being the best and making sure people coming after me also were the best. And so what that translated to was me becoming a first published author, both out a PhD by the time I was 20. Wow. Me also working with them to make sure they recruited directly from Baltimore. But that's like, I feel, a same story all throughout, like black women, our history. We have to come and be in the best. The spaces don't accept us, but we don't need to be accepted, right? We just need to exist. And that's all I want.
Yes. That's everything.
And so what led me to retiring from engineering was I've done everything, right? Who gets to be a published first author, work on nuclear plants, power plants? Like, I get to use my engineering brain now to make solutions, and I get to be in a space where people accept me and deserve me and all of my blackness.
Yes.
The motorsports industry is very male, white male dominated, but two, they have no choice but to recognize our brilliance and our talent, right? So I took everything I got from engineering, of not having people by my side, of not being recognized, and that is what I bring now to this space, and also making sure for more black people, we don't have to keep the same fight, because I don't want that for my kids or my future grandkids or anybody else.
I love that. What I heard you say is that who you are and what you bring to the table is the asset.
Yes.
I love it. I love it. Thank you for being here and making the space, because we need, and there are so many folks who are following in your footsteps, because there are seats at the table. It's what we do. So, the next question is for Ariane. So Ariane, AnitaB.org, a global organization for women technologists, say that women technologists made up less than 29% of the tech workforce in 2020. Yet only 2.2% were women of color. And when it comes to board representation, less than 30% of board members are women. And of that, only 6.6% are women of color. Ariane, as someone who has created a product for women that combat issues that disproportionately face black women, do you believe that these numbers have impacted your ability to recruit investors? That's my first question, and then I have a follow-up.
Great question. So I honestly think that the disparities have affected my ability to bring in investors. I launched the company and immediately knew that I had a company that could be venture-backed, that could scale to drive more than 100 million or more in revenue. And to my surprise, I discovered that less than 37 black women at the time, in the year 2015, had successfully gotten more than $1 million in venture funding. Out of the gate, I made it my business to figure out an alternative way to fund the business, and that turned into leveraging pitch competitions. And the first one I did about 5 days after launching, and that helped me bring in $125,000. And after a crazy life event, I know, right? After a crazy life event, I went on to win 47 pitch competitions and $1.2 million.
47 pitch competitions. That might be the most winningest pitch competitor that we have, and that's a black woman.
For sure, and it's funny, people look at it and they're like, wow, you've done amazing things, but for me, I just can't help but think about what I could have done had I had access to capital. The one really cool thing about it was that I was able to grow a company and make mistakes and learn and make decisions without having people on my back. So then when it actually got to a point where things were running and we had gotten to $1 million in revenue, I went for investment and I got Beyonce, I got Pharrell, I got VC
Come on,
funds.
y'all.
And it was that much better. So I am very much somebody who's always going to tell you that before you try to approach investors, build the business, get the traction, because you will quickly get to a point where people can't deny your numbers. Like what did Jay-Z say? Men lie, women lie, numbers don't. And I'm very much somebody that follows the numbers.
I love it. The best revenge is your paper. So, just a follow up, because you have some heavy hitters. I mean, we're talking about Pharrell, we're talking about Beyonce. You were backed by both of them. So, as you've overcome those challenges, you've definitely suggested some great alternative paths. But help us understand, your recommendation to the folks out there who are saying, how do we do it despite in any way? So, where are those spaces and opportunities? I mean, you have some phenomenal board members. You've really leaned into your networks. What does that look like?
Well, for one, I want to encourage everybody in the room to know that you don't necessarily need a seat at the table. Sometimes, as a Black person especially, you are the table. Like, I like to think that the room doesn't exist until I get there. So there's that.
Period.
I think the other thing that I encourage people to have is a really good grasp of your numbers. Like, I meet women all the time who come up to me, and it doesn't matter if it's a body butter business or a boutique or an innovative tech company, you have to know your market opportunity, your differentiator, how you're unique, how you're going to scale it. And at the end of the day, have your documentation in order. It's so easy to think that you want that introduction or that opportunity. And a lot of times we miss out, not because we didn't have the right opportunity, we just were not ready. So get ready so you can stay ready and you don't have to get ready. And then with all of the grasp on your numbers and more, you can apply for grants. You can apply for pitch competitions. You can network and make sure that you're securing the bag.
I love it. Thank you for all of those gems. I see note-taking happening around us. This question is for you, Alana. According to the previously mentioned Women's Enterprise Report, the gender disparities seen in female-founded startups reflect the gender disparities in venture capital firms. The lack of diversity starts at the top, as funding decision makers remain predominantly men, with only 16.1% of venture capital decision makers being female in the US. The lack of, and Alana, for you, and actually to hit a quote that you say often, which reflects that while there are approximately $82.4 trillion in assets that are under management, only 1.4% of those assets go to firms by women and or people of color. 1.4% of 82.4 trillion. How does this grim reality impact entrepreneurs as they seek fundraising? And how does it motivate you and inspire your work as a venture capitalist?
Yeah, no, great question. So I think really when we think about the opportunity, which is investing in diverse founders, it starts with the lack of check writers, right? Like, that is what that quote is about. And when you think about the lack of check writers, it's really because historically VC has benefited from being an exclusive, all-white, all-boys club, and they haven't wanted people who would, come in and change the narrative. And I think because of that, it's really important that we find ways to not just support diverse founders, but diverse fund managers, and create this ecosystem, right? Like, this is what this event is all about. Bringing capital, resources, support to these founders, because building a fund and a first-time fund is hard, right? And it feels a lot like a startup. It feels a lot like being an entrepreneur. And when you think about the grim reality that everyone's facing right now, is that capital is really expensive. It's hard to fundraise on both sides, and it's really important. As Ariane was saying, is like, lean into your numbers, lean into the market opportunity, lean into why you're different and why you're uniquely compelled to win. And those people who get you will be right there for you. And those people who won't will have to just, hurry up and wait and get in line when your business is starting to excel or your fund is starting to excel and they can't get allocation in you, right? But it's very difficult right now on both sides. And I think the opportunity is for everyone to collaborate and just come together so that as an ecosystem, even if, the old boys club is ignoring us, we have each other.
I think that's so well put. Thank you. And we're so glad you're here because we need that representation. When I think about, our company, we've raised about $6.5 million to date. To the statistic that Ariane shared earlier, that, I was part of one of less than 50 women to raise over $1 million for my startup at the time. And those numbers were so difficult. And what I'm going to share with you all right now are some heavy hitting statistics that literally go against the grain. If you're going to make a good investment, you look at the data, you trust the data. So let me share some data. That female-founded companies perform 63% better than all male founding teams. That women-led teams generate a 35% higher return on investment and a 12% higher revenue than all male teams. And that for every dollar of funding, female founder startups generate 78 cents, whereas male-founded startups generate only 31%. I'm talking about data, y'all. So why are we having issues? Female-founded startups grow by 84% compared to male-founded startups. And so when we pause and we think about these numbers, I want you to please, each of you panelists, to take a few minutes to share whether these stats sound correct to you based on your own experiences. We know they do. But lead the way. Alana, please start.
Yeah, I'll start with this one. I think, it's definitely makes a lot of sense when you look at the dynamics specifically of female founders outperforming. It's the same dynamic with black founders, right? Like if you're not able to fundraise the capital, like Ariane, like you're doing 47 pitch competitions and winning, right? Like you don't have an option to fail, and that lack of optionality creates a scrappiness and a hustle that makes us uniquely compelled to win in the longer term. And I think people, a lot of times they see those statistics and like, oh, this is a problem, but like they should be looking at this as an opportunity and as a white space, right? Like as allocators, as investors, it's imperative that you find like pockets of the market that have been neglected, because your job is to drive returns. And those places that are sometimes overlooked are the places that could drive the biggest return, because they're, in some examples, low beta, low correlation to everything that's happening. When you look at, some of these, larger fundraisers where the founders were like, oh, they botched the numbers, right? Like, let's all think about Kylie Jenner, right? Great example. And black founders are not.
Fenty.
Yeah, versus Fenty, right? Like, there is one real billionaire of a mega, cosmetics brand that's actually self-made, right? So I think it's really important to just reorient those conversations too. Like founders in the room, like when people are saying, hey, this is, maybe why it's going to be difficult for you to fundraise. It's like, okay, maybe this is why it's difficult for me to fundraise, but this is how I win with my customers. This is how I win with building strategic partnerships. This is how I win with, recruiting an all-star team of black people, right? Like, oh, that's funny, your portcos don't have any diversity. All of my team is diverse. You know what I mean? Like, this is how you win in the longer term, and they will start to notice once they see those repetitions and the scalability of just what you're doing.
Love it.
So last year, I became an angel investor, and I started writing my own checks into other companies because I started to see a disparity even in tech companies where Black founders were innovating like the barbershop model, the hair model, the nail model, and it usually included a physical good, and it wasn't always like a software or an app. And one of the things that I realized very quickly was that when I was navigating my investment journey, I'm the prize. Like me bringing Bob Schmojo onto my cap table as an investor in my company, he's not the prize, I'm the prize. I'm the one doing the work. I'm the one growing the company. And at the end of the day, it is his privilege for me to allow him to invest. So I'm always encouraging people to think about the narrative in a different way. And the other thing is, sometimes pursuing investment from Black funds isn't enough within itself, because, as Alana said, Black VCs face many of the same disparities, and oftentimes the people who invest in those funds have different parameters that they have to meet, which could make those terms predatory too. So at the end of the day, if you decide to navigate this path, you need to understand the language. You need to understand what a cap table is, AKA a document that says who invested in your company. Know your metrics. Know if you want to get an investment on something called a safe note, which is founder friendly. Or are you pursuing a loan-like investment that could be a convertible note? So I think that a lot of the ways we also win is in knowing the language and unpacking exactly what we want, because a lot of the times I am saying no to things that I know other founders are saying yes to. And it's simply because they don't know the language. So at night, like, those are the things that kind of keep me up at night. And I've made it my business to, like, be the friend that people can send their documents to if they are thinking about investment, for me to look them over and tell them how to best advocate for themselves.
And for me, this was the reason why we changed our model. So we are hybrid, which means we have a for-profit and non-profit. Because when I got started in 2017, it was this black girl from Baltimore that says, "To do you like Baltimoreans do." But imagine being in rooms with people who have never heard of one black woman in chemical engineers, then the crazy idea of combining dirt bikes and STEM, and then this radical idea that we don't have to send black people to jail for nonviolent offenses. So like a lot of people, when you start like a nonprofit, you think that you're just gonna get funding. No. We survived from 2016, 2017, all the way up to 2021 with the largest grant we ever got locally was $10,000. And the reason why we survived was because I went into hustle mode. And that's just black women, right? I have to do this work. I love this work, but I'm not gonna wait for y'all to decide that I'm worthy of investment. And so I look like diversifying our revenue streams. That meant going to Cleveland, working with their mayor. That meant going to Philadelphia, working with their mayor. That meant also getting contracts in Baltimore City schools, recs and parks, Pratt Library. And before COVID hit, we had up to $400,000 in just service-provided revenue as B360, a company. It also looked like becoming an Echo and Green Fellow, right, and going national before going local, just because people could not understand these three crazy ideas. And how it's transformed, which is the brighter side, is now people have caught up to what we do. But also, I didn't really need y'all to catch up because we were already here doing the work. And now it looks like getting $1.25 million in ARPA funds from the city. It looks like about to make an announcement about congressional funds from our senators. And thank y'all. But it really looks like having to be the first, but not being afraid to keep pulling people up behind me and making sure they don't go through those same obstacles. And so, of course, the numbers are the numbers, but again, why black women win specifically is because it's in our DNA. Our families, our grandmothers, our great-grandmothers came, especially for me, to Baltimore for freedom, and that's what this city owes me, but also this space. I don't have a choice but to succeed because we can't keep operating the same ways we have for 400, 500 years. So the numbers don't mean nothing to me because we're going to be here doing our thing.
Yeah.
Come on. All right, thank you. I mean, I'm hot from just the power that's on this panel. I want to give an opportunity to the audience. If anyone has any questions, we'd love for you. We can take about 1 or 2 questions before we have to jump off this stage. Does anyone have anything top of mind? Yes.
I know you mentioned pre-pandemic. Are you back in the high schools now in the local area? My husband actually is a JROTC instructor, and I'm just so excited. I'm here for me, but everything's going towards the children. Like, they would be so encouraged and just benefit so much from what you're doing, and they have family members who are part of the culture that you're speaking of, and just showing them how far that they've already been predestined to go. So what is B360 now doing in Baltimore City for the children in the high schools?
Thank you. Good question. So we just launched our partnership with Blueford Drew Jemison. So again, an idea I had back when we got started that we would take over our computer science class. And so in this computer science / physics class, students are learning about how you pop a wheelie. That's a physics equation, right? So again, we're getting rid of the old way of thinking about STEM and showing them how what we do every day correlates. We're also right now in 15 rec centers, 2 other schools, 5 libraries. And so every day we're rapidly growing. And some of my team is upstairs, which is one of my favorite things too. So our classrooms look like someone as young as 14, a diversion graduate, and then 2 adult instructors who are also black people in STEM, teaching and working with now over 9,000 students and counting, and we train more than 57 dirt bike rides and growing. So yes, we are rapidly in as many schools as possible, and we need more volunteers because, Lord, it has been a great challenge.
Thank you.
Congratulations, Brittany, and everything, and even in the bounce back post-COVID, you guys came back even stronger. So,
Thank you.
congrats. One more question? Any other questions?
How you guys doing? Thank you guys so much for the presentation. One of the questions I have and what I've heard is you guys have definitely been, we need to do better as banks, supporting you guys early on. So what are some things you guys recommend as banks that we could do to help you guys starting off and don't discourage you guys?
Oh, I love this question. So I think, especially a lot of banks have been figuring out like, hey, how do we support emerging managers more, right? And, sometimes there are, certain different structures where a bank can't, launch a program and allocate to, funds or fund investments rather. But there's lots of interesting ways that I've seen, all of these banks get really creative. One big one is like fueling community, right? Like, so women in VCs less than almost 2%, right? So how do you get more to support more community events and networking? And some banks have spun up different, retreats or, lighthearted ways to just get more women VCs together, right? Because that's going to drive more deal flow. It's going to drive more community. And an unfortunate reality that not a lot of people are talking about is being a woman in VC is, of course, hard breaking in, but it's hard to, I've seen a lot of great female peers who are at these amazing funds just turn over because it is a really difficult environment to be in that's, obviously male dominated, there's not very much diversity, and so it's really difficult sometimes to be a woman and say, you know what, well, there's all the nuances that come with working in finance, and then there's all the nuances that come with working VC, but where's my community, right? And so I think a big piece I've seen a lot of banks do is one, like building out more community for peer-to-peer mentorship. The second one, obviously, every VC fund, once they're up and running and established, like line of credits, right? Like, it's just managing all those small different pieces and how you structure a fund to be not just fund one, right? Because we need all these diverse managers to really not just, have a great fund one, but have a great fund 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, to really change this whole narrative where more diverse founders are getting funded, right? Like, we can't just have these emerging managers have a great fund one and then not go out and raise a fund two. Like, they need that everlasting kind of almost evergreen support that comes with, sometimes great partnerships with banks. Did that answer your question?
And so to add to that really quickly, I think that one of the things that you all could figure out is how the hell to meet founders where they are. Brett Schreiber is in the room. He's right there. Hey, Brett. So Fulton Bank has a program where they are looking at a different set of metrics when it comes to startups because they saw companies come for funding and not be able to get it with underwriting from a traditional bank, but then those companies were acquired for billions. So I say be creative in the programming and the offering that you have to meet founders where they are, because I'm a private client with Chase, and in the week that I opened the account, they were like, what do you need, money? Oh, okay, sis, come to this private dinner with Kevin Hart and Heartbeat Ventures. Oh, you need banking instruments? Sure, let's do that, So I think that relationship on both the banking side and the VC and founder is super vital, because I personally had never had such a close relationship with my banker to the point where they're keeping me at top of mind for opportunities, bringing me in the room, and then going a step further to say, you know what? We want you in all of our restrooms at the bank branches. Let's go ahead and give you $100,000.
Yep.
Amazing.
Huge.
Can I add real quick too?
Nope.
Yeah, for me, just a cheat sheet, right? Give us the codes and the access to how companies like Amazon don't pay taxes, right? I just learned about T-bills. I just learned about all these different ways to grow our money as we're making this capital campaign, but I would have liked to known that in 2017. And so if banks can just be a little more thoughtful in their approach of being in the community, financial literacy is of course overused, but give us a 1, 2, 3, grow my money. That's what I need.
I love it. Thank you all. And yes, the Fulton plug. Just kidding, but really, it's a unique opportunity here in Baltimore, and we're so thankful for your presence. So that's all the time, unfortunately, that we have this afternoon. Our panelists will be here all day, or as long as they can be for sure. But before we conclude, I would love to ask the panelists to plug their websites, social media handles, because we all have to stay connected after this. And I know we have some B360 volunteers in the house, so please, we'll start with you, Ariane.
Sure, so you can follow Femly on Instagram. It's Femly. I am the only Ariane Long on LinkedIn. Feel free to send me a DM.
And ours, Instagram and Facebook, B360 Baltimore. Mine is CNT, Not Be Hustle, Can't Not Be Hustle. And then, of course, our website is ride4change.org. Join our campaign, sign up, volunteer, donate.
Yeah, and then the best way to find me is just on Instagram. It's Alana Mann. So that's obviously ALANAMANN.
Awesome. Thank you all. And on behalf of CIAA and Visit Baltimore, I sincerely appreciate all of our panelists and participants for contributing to the discussion about women on the rise in tech. You were visionaries in your own right, and it was an honor and a privilege to moderate such a prolific and fabulous conversation. So thank you.
Thank you.